Okay, and welcome to the next chapter in Refugee. When we last left Joseph, he was on a train with his family to go meet his father so that they could escape Nazi Germany. And he had decided to take off his paper armband, and he wanted to see, can anyone really tell if I'm Jewish just by the way I look, if I don't identify? And he got caught when his paper fell out of his pocket. So let's see what's going on with him. Joseph, on a train to Hamburg, Germany, 1939, still one day from home. The Hitler Youth led Joseph down the narrow corridor of the German passenger car. Tears sprung to Joseph's eyes. The brown shirt who had taken his father away on Kristallnacht had said, "We'll come back for you soon enough." But Joseph hadn't waited. He'd gone to them with this stupid stunt. They came to a compartment with a man in the uniform of the Nazi secret state police, the Gestapo, and Joseph stumbled. The Gestapo man looked up at them through the window in his door. "No, not here, not now, not like this," Joseph prayed. And the Hitler Youth boy pushed Joseph on past the office. They came to the door of the Jewish train car, and the Hitler Youth spun Joseph around. He glanced over his shoulder to make sure no one was listening. "What were you thinking?" the boy whispered. Joseph couldn't speak. The boy gave his arm back to Joseph and thrust it at him. "Put that on, and don't ever do that again. Do you understand?" The Hitler Youth told Joseph. Yeah. Joseph stamped. Thank you. The Hitler Youth breathed hard, his face red like he was the one in trouble. He spotted the piece of candy Joseph had bought for Ruth and took it. He stood taller, tugged at the bottom of his brown shirt to straighten it, then turned and marched away. Joseph slipped back into the compartment, still shaking, and collapsed onto his bench. He stayed there the rest of the trip, his armband securely in place and as visible as possible. He didn't even leave to go to the bathroom. Hours later, the train pulled into Hamburg Central Railway Station. Joseph's mother led him and his sister through the crowds to the Hamburg docks where their ship waited for them. Joseph had never seen anything so big. If you stood the ship on end, it would have been taller than any building in Berlin. 2 giant tan smokestacks stuck up from the middle of the ship, one of them belching gray-black diesel engine smoke. A steep ramp ran to the top of the tall black hull, and hundreds of people were already on board, milling around under colorful, fluttering pennants and waving to friends and family down on the dock. Flying highest of all, as to remind everybody who really was in charge, was the red and white Nazi flag with the black swastika in the middle. The ship was called the MS St. Louis. St. Louis was the name of a city in America, Joseph had learned. That seemed like a good sign to him, a sign maybe eventually they would get to America, maybe one day visit the real St. Louis. A shabby-looking man stumbled out from behind the crates and luggage piled up on the dock, and Ruthie screamed. Joseph jumped, and his mother took a frightened step back. The man reached out for them. "You made it! At last!" That voice, thought Joseph. Could it really be? The man threw his arms around Mama. She let him hug her, even though she still held her hands across her chest as if to ward him off. He stepped back and held her. "Oh, my dearest Rachel, I thought I'd never see you again." It was him. The shaggy man who had lurched from the shadows, like an escapee from a mental asylum, was Joseph's father, Aaron Landau. Joseph shuddered. His papa looked nothing like the man who had been dragged away from their home 6 months ago. His thick brown hair and beard had been shaved off, and his head and face were covered with scraggly stubble. He was thinner, too thin, a skeleton in a suit 3 times too big for him now. Aaron Landau's eyes bulged from his thin face as he turned to look at his children. Joseph's breath caught in his throat, and Ruthie cried out and buried her face in Joseph's stomach as their papa pulled the 2 of them into a hug. He smelled so strong, like the alley behind a butcher shop, that Joseph had to turn his head away. "Oh, Joseph, Ruth, my darlings!" He kissed the top of their heads again and again and then jumped back. He looked around maniacally like there were spies everywhere. "We have to go. We can't stay here. We have to get on board before they stop us." "But I have tickets and visas," Mama said. Papa shook his head. It doesn't matter. His eyes looked like they were going to pop out of their sockets. They'll stop us. They'll take me back. Ruthie clung to her brother. Papa was scaring her. He scared Joseph too. Hurry, Papa said. He pulled the family with him into the stacks of crates, and Joseph tried to keep up with them as he darted from place to place, dodging imaginary enemies. Joseph gave his mother a frightened glance that said, like, what's wrong with Papa? Mama just shook her head, her eyes full of worry. When they got close to the ramp, Papa squatted down beside the last of the crates. On the count of 3, we make a break for it. Don't stop. Don't stop for anything. We have to get on that ship. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Joseph wasn't ready. None of them were. They watched as Aaron Landau ran for the ramp, where other passengers had already lined up to hand their tickets to a smiling man in a uniform. Joseph's father threw himself past the man and stumbled into the railing before sprinting up the gangway. Wait, wait, the soldier cried. Quickly now, children, Mama said. Together they hurried to the ramp as best as they could, carrying all the suitcases. I have his ticket, she told the sailor. I'm sorry, we can wait our turn. The startled man at the front of the line motioned for them to go ahead, and Joseph's mother thanked him. My husband is just excited to leave, she told the sailor. He smiled sadly and punched his tickets. I understand. Oh, let me get someone to help you with the bags. Porter! Joseph stood in wonder as another sailor, a German man, a man who wasn't Jewish, put a suitcase under each arm and one in each hand and led them up the gangway. He treated them like real passengers, like real people. And he wasn't the only one. Every sailor that they met tipped their hat at them, and the steward that showed them to their cabin assured them that they could call upon him for anything they needed while on board. Anything at all. The room was spotless. The bed linens were freshly laundered, and the hand towels were neatly stacked. It's a trick, Papa said when the door was closed. He glanced around the little cabin like the walls were closing in. They're going to come for us soon enough, he said. It was just what the brown shirt had told Joseph, too. Mama put her hands on Joseph and Ruthie's head. Why don't you two go up and explore, and I'll stay here with your father? Joseph and Ruth were only too glad to get away from Papa. A few hours later, they watched from the promenade as the tugboats pushed the MS St. Louis away from the dock, and passengers threw confetti and celebrated and blew kisses goodbye to their family. And Joseph and his family were on their way to a new country, a new life. But all Joseph could think about was what terrible things must have happened to his father to make him look so awful and act so scared. Stay tuned for next week's exciting adventures with Joseph.